Those are the only rules that work. Good thing we use valet parking.
Taxi!
Hey folks, welcome back. Someone please tell me I'm not the only person with fond memories of this movie. Loaded Weapon 1 might be one of the funniest movies that no one ever talks about or even remembers. And it's full of stars, A-listers, there's cameos, there's future stars in this movie. It has a totally silly premise that goes along with the silly comedy, and this movie is great. Loaded Weapon 1 is a 1993 comedy, directed by Gene Quintano. He didn't direct a lot of movies, but he was a writer on quite a few, including 3 of the Police Academy movies. It's essentially a direct spoof of the Lethal Weapon films, with a few other 80s and 90s action films thrown in the mix. Now it stars Emilio Estevez and Samuel L. Jackson as your Riggs and Murtaugh stand-ins. Their names are Colt and Luger. Now I was 15 years old when this movie came out, and I had grown up with a love of spoof comedies. Airplane, Naked Gun, Top Secret, and pretty much any other one you can think of, including Hot Shots Part 1 and 2, which I'd also seen in the theaters. So naturally, I couldn't wait to see this one, and I was not disappointed. Now this is the kind of comedy people either love or hate, but you have to appreciate the amount of effort that goes into some of these jokes. Now it was only mildly successful when it came out, which is why we never got a sequel. Although the movie is called Loaded Weapon 1, there never was a Loaded Weapon 2. So I'm going to briefly explain what this movie is even about, but I'm going to spend a lot more time talking about why I think it's hilarious. So the plot goes like this. Colt is a kind of down on his luck detective who gets partnered with the straight-laced Luger. They're investigating a dead cop and her potential involvement in a drug ring involving Girl Scout cookies, or as they're called in the film, Wilderness Girl cookies. Apparently the bad guys found a way to put cocaine in the Wilderness Girls cookies to distribute them. And that's about as much of this plot as you need to understand. So let me just say, Loaded Weapon 1 ranks pretty high on my spoof movie list. If my top 3 all time are I'm Gonna Get You Sucker, Airplane, and Naked Gun, then Loaded Weapon probably comes in at a tie for number 4 with Top Secret. And you know what? Thinking about it even more, it may be a tie for 5th because Black Dynamite might be my favorite all-time spoof movie. Now let me tell you why I think this movie's great. I could talk for hours about all the little jokes that are hidden around in the background of this film. So I'm only going to concentrate on a few. Now since this is a spoof movie, everything that happens is just really stereotypical. The movie starts out with Officer Colt going into a convenience store. And you know what that means in any of these action movies. There's going to be a shootout of some kind. But all the things that are happening in the background just make this store hilarious. Like we all know that feeling of cameras watching us in convenience stores. And there's a scene where like a bunch of cameras just pop up behind Colt and they're looking over his shoulder. And as soon as he turns his head, they look away like people. And it's just funny, to me at least. Soon after, you get the standard shootout with a bunch of little funny gags thrown in, like some night vision goggles. And one thing I didn't mention is that there's some gags that happen in this movie and you don't even know if they were done on purpose or as part of the goofiness of the movie. Like in the middle of this store shootout, Colt changes weapons and it's not explained and then he changes back. So I don't know if that was like a continuity error or if that's part of the movie. Something this movie does great is use a scene to set up another scene later in the movie. Like you wouldn't expect to see the Quickie Mart anymore in this movie, but it shows up again in the Hannibal Lecter spoof scene of all places. Right after the convenience store shootout, you get the first scene that actually starts to explain the plot a little bit. This is where you first meet Whoopi Goldberg and Tim Curry's characters. Tim Curry's introduction in the scene is pretty hilarious in my opinion, and I like this entire scene honestly. But in this scene, you find out that Whoopi Goldberg's character was partners with Sam Jackson's character in the past. She's killed by Tim Curry, and that's what sets the story in motion. Now beyond that, there's not a lot more you need to know about the plot, other than it being a vehicle for all the jokes to come. In my previous movie reviews and retrospectives, I always like to mention when there's a setup and a payoff in a movie. And this movie has several of them. One of them involves what might be my second favorite joke in this entire movie, There's a woman talking to a sketch artist in the police station, and she's describing the suspect. But when you see the sketch artist, he's making a mold of what looks like a Mr. Potato Head. So you might get a little chuckle at that joke and just kind of think, okay, a little throwaway joke. There's a whole bunch of stuff happening in this police station. That was just one of those little things, right? Less than 10 minutes later, there's a scene with Colt and Luger outside the department. And this is where Charlie Sheen makes his cameo. Well, in the background, 2 police officers are dragging a suspect in. And it's a guy that looks exactly like the Potato Head. And you can hear him saying, "Oh my God, no, let me go. They're going to fry me." If this doesn't make you laugh, you do not have a soul. I promise you.
All I know is she was supposed to meet some stoolie at the Squealers Hotel. What I don't need is some hotshot cowboy from...
Don't fry me!
There's another scene, which has always been my favorite joke in this movie, but admittedly, I have a weird sense of humor. In most action movies, especially ones involving cops, there's always a scene where they're getting tailed by the bad guys. Well, this happens here, except something a little different goes on. Luger spots the tail. He looks in his rearview mirror and says, "Hold on, I think we're being followed." Well, now there's 2 dudes in the back seat with masks on and guns. And it's objectively hilarious. So Luger says, "Hold on, I'm going to try to lose him." He spins the car, cut back to the interior, the 2 guys are gone. And it's always been just one of the funniest things I've ever seen in a movie. Like I said, I'm a little silly, but I love this scene. The very next scene, you get introduced to the movie's actual bad guy, which is played by William Shatner. In the same scene, you get a Dennis Leary cameo and a young Denise Richards. Did I mention there's a ton of cameos in this movie? Alright, so I'm going to talk about one more funny scene before I wrap this up. Apparently Luger has PTSD, and whenever he has to draw his weapon on a suspect, he freezes up. So in a scene where Luger needs to save Colt from Tim Curry's character, Luger freezes up and has an absolutely hilarious flashback. Apparently years earlier, when Luger and Whoopi Goldberg's character were just beat cops and partners, a similar situation happened. What's funny about this scene is that the guy pointing a gun at Whoopi Goldberg's head is a mime, and he's pointing a finger gun at her, and she's begging Luger to shoot him, and he can't. So yeah, Loaded Weapon 1. It's just one of the funniest movies around in my opinion. And like I said, I'm weird, but this movie's hilarious to me. I really wish it would have been a bigger hit, but it wasn't, so hopefully more people discover it as the years go by. Have you seen Loaded Weapon 1? And if so, did you enjoy it? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.
Tell you what, it's gonna take a lot more than a couple of car bombs to get us off this case.
Not a hell of a lot more.